Hi, everyone. This is Steve Delisant, and welcome to this week's edition of CEOs You Should Know. I am joined by Kyle Cooke, CEO, founder, and creator of Loverboy. Kyle, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you again.
You too. A lot of probably our listeners know you from reality TV, right? But after getting to talk to you, learn a little bit about you, obviously, entrepreneurship something is that you've had for a lot of years, right? Way before Loverboy. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about that mindset and really what brought you to that field?
Yeah. As you kind of pointed out, most people know me from Bravo. So I've been on Summer House since day one. I kind of helped kind of make that first
Launch
season
and
happen.
kick it off.
Yeah. But yeah, I kind of got the entrepreneurial itch very early on. You know, in high school, I was kind of taking odd jobs, whether it's landscaping. I helped build a house one summer. Um, but then I found Cutco, and I was my own boss. I made like 10 grand selling knives. And that was cold calling. That was, managing leads. It was following up. And what I realized very early on is I don't care what you end up doing, but if you plan to be in business, if you've never sold anything,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be able to relate to how a business actually works. Like, I think there's just so much value in cold calling and kind of knocking on doors and doing the grunt work, doing the hard work. And so that was my first foray. Then in college, I ran a contracting business.
Okay.
Was at undergraduate school. A flyer was on my desk. Hey, do you want to run your own business this summer? And I'm like, yeah. All my friends are like going off to Wall Street for internships. And I ran a painting company. It was a franchise. I was the franchisee. And it was wild. I mean, at any given point in time when I was 20 years old, I had, 5 or 6 painting crews with like 50 or 60 painters all throughout the state of New Hampshire where I'm from. And I mean, that was like Cutco on steroids, right? A lot more complicated, trying to make someone happy by, working on their most valuable asset, their home.
And you saw the end result.
Yeah. And so, oddly enough, I was actually at a liberal arts school for undergrad. And so all of my business and entrepreneurship, like acumen, was from kind of, my jobs on the side.
Mm-hmm. Real life experiences.
Yep.
I know we talked a little bit about when you first moved to New York, right? That was taking a leap of faith and something that was also risky and a risk at the time.
Yeah. In 2007, I joined a college buddy to help him start a commercial real estate finance brokerage. I knew nothing about any one of those words, but I knew I could sell. Again, going back to Cutco. And he needed someone who could really manage relationships. We were, helping real estate owner, operator, developers try to seek out alternative financing. And things got crazier and crazier and crazier. And then boom, the Great Recession. And, I didn't have a salary. I came down here, like I said, leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wild learning lesson, those 2 years. But, you kind of have to put yourself out there to learn what you're made of and learn what you're interested in.
What do you think you learned from that experience?
That you can only fake it till you make it to a point. So I could talk the talk, but I couldn't walk the walk in the sense that I had no idea what I was talking about. I mean, like, yeah, talk to me about your cap table. Like, let's talk about the waterfall. What's the debt service ratio? I had no idea what I was talking about, but I'm a quick learner. So at that point in time, my buddy decided to move the business to Arizona due to everything was happening on Wall Street. He refocused on small business loans. When I was working with him, we were like trophy hunting, for lack of a better word. Huge real estate projects, hundreds of millions of dollars with a 1% chance of closing. And so he moved to Arizona. I was just like, I want to go to business school. Like, I don't want to fake it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn the basics. And look, business school is not for everybody. I did the 2-year full-time MBA program, but what I did was go to the school known for entrepreneurship, Babson. It's been number 1 for 31 consecutive years. I actually just looked it up before coming here. And I knew that I would go there, probably get tempted to go to a big company because I'm going to rack up a bunch of student debt. But, having an entrepreneurial kind of route to my graduate studies was really important to me. So I went there in 2009, graduated in 2011. So
Nice.
again, that you'll you learn a lot when you put yourself out there.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
learned, I was like, all right, undergrad for me was a big party.
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I worked hard, but I wanted to invest in myself. I know there's all sorts of opinions on grad schools these days. Like Peter Thiel in particular has all sorts of thoughts on like, student debt, whether it's grad or undergrad, right? So it's not for everybody, but it really helped me kind of find myself.
Yeah, and I think it's important. You said you had that foundation from the school, right, that you didn't have prior to it. So
Yep.
it definitely paid off in the long run.
Yeah.
What was some of your first ventures out of grad school?
Well, this is actually something I like to talk about. I mean, particularly if, your audience, aspiring entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
people, they might have the itch or they're trying to weigh their options or they're just listening in, out of curiosity. In grad school, like I said, there's a lot of temptation to go make, a big high paying job when you leave. But I was paying very close attention to the trends. And at that time, companies like Groupon and Living Social
Mhm.
were kind of changing the face of like brick and mortar retail in terms of how these businesses acquire customers, but not in a really good way, right? So restaurants were the number one focus, and a coupon cutter coming in at 8 o'clock on a Friday is not how you want to fill seats. And I was just like, my God, okay, here's a trend,
Mhm.
but the number one business utilizing these these deal sites, it's actually destroying their business. So I focused on a yield management tool, much like Hotel Tonight. So actually, it was called Reservation Tonight. I rebranded it, and it was helping people find last minute reservations at a discrete discount.
That's awesome.
So it was curation meets deals.
Mhm.
And it wasn't like a, buy this and use it whenever you want. You were filling empty seats at the restaurant, much like a plane charges people different prices,
Mhm.
depending on when you book. But it was a wild ride because A, I wasn't passionate about it.
Mhm.
B, I wasn't a technical co-founder. I didn't have a co-founder. And C, I kind of forgot one of the big magic ingredients, which was like, is this something, not only am I capable of executing, but am I passionate about it?
Yep.
Is this going to make a difference in my life? Is this going to make a difference in other people's lives?
Yep.
So it was a learning lesson. I put a lot of my own money in. I literally maxed out my student loans to start the business because I had to, pay for developers. And one of my friends was like, Kyle, you pulled the cord so early. And I was like, dude, I saw the writing on the wall. This is completely dependent on venture capital, like
Mhm.
most marketplaces. When I say marketplaces, I'm talking Airbnb, Uber. It's a winner takes all strategy. It
Yep.
usually takes tens, hundreds, if not billions of dollars
Mhm.
to win those marketplaces. And I'm like, yo, OpenTable is going to figure this out, or somebody else that already has everything lined up in a row. And all the VCs already made bets on the daily deal sites that had no technology whatsoever. And it was just bad timing.
Yeah.
I chased the trend. And by the time I was ready to go to market, all the VCs had made their bets. And this was a business model that required venture capital. So
Mhm.
I hung up my cleats.
Yeah, but I mean, the experience probably taught you a lot and got you
Yeah.
ready for the next one. I know one of the other experiences we talked about prior was with bird dogs and the lessons you learned there. Would you share with the listeners a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So, I think one thing that I encourage everybody to do is have as many experiences as possible, work in as many industries as possible. I had no interest in going into apparel, no interest in consumer for that matter, like consumer goods. But one of my good buddies started Bird Dogs, and he offered me, come on as a co-founder. And I gave it a lot of thought, and I was like, first and foremost, you've been at this a year. You provided the seed capital, right? This is always going to be your baby.
Mhm.
Even if I got, 15, 20%, like this is going to be your baby. And I'm the kind of guy, I've already had that little taste
Yep.
going way back to my teens and 20s. I kind of want to be in control of my own destiny, but I want to help you because I think this is a phenomenal business. It's a phenomenal product and it's fun. And fun is often overlooked in business. What we were making were shorts with a built-in liner, and we were basically saying like death to underwear, death to wedgies, death to like, the fabric bunching around your your family jewels. And so we, in 2015, started creating content that looked nothing like anything else out there. Like if you think about the average Bonobos or J. Crew or, fill in the blank brand trying to, appeal to men, it's so boring, so bland, and it usually requires a 30% discount just to get you to stop scrolling. And this is in the heyday of Facebook, mind you. We're like, yo, let's make our content funny. Duh. Like, let's make our content shareable. Like, and by doing these things, we realized to kind of take a page out of Gary Vee's book back in 2009, crush it. Content is king. If you can figure out a way to make content that people want to consume, and oh, by the way, it's advertising a product discreetly, or in some cases in a hilarious manner, you're going to win because you're going to lower your cost of customer acquisition, right? Like if J. Crew is running, I'm picking on J. Crew, I don't know why, but if J. Crew is running an ad on Facebook and the hook is 30% off, are they even breaking even on a first purchase? Well, guess what? When you're running a startup and you don't break even on your first purchase, you better go be prepared to give away 10, 20, 30, 50% of the business to venture capitalists. No one wanted to give us money back then. So we use content, and that opened my eyes. I was the guy on camera making people laugh, and this is pre-Summer House. And so when the Summer House opportunity came around, I already knew content is king.
Yep.
Yeah, cash will always be our Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
Like the true king. But a close second is content. And so, again, you don't get anywhere in life by saying no. And you certainly don't figure out how to kind of like navigate your own path without having some true life experiences. And at this time, I'm 33 or 32, 33, and I'm like, all right, this is going to be my baby. I'm not going in full time, but I'm going to help my buddy. We're going to have a lot of fun in the process. I'm going to learn a lot.
Yep.
That's exactly what we did.
I think that's an important message for everybody listening. Like all of the background, all of your journey, right? It enabled you to get that foundation to be the success you are today, right? Like all those different experiences, you learned something from, and you were able to take stuff away that was able to set yourself up for the next journey.
And I love the word foundation, right? Like we're so entrepreneurs, and particularly young aspiring entrepreneurs, whether they're in college or debating on whether to go. Our reality field is like so distorted by the Elon Musk. Let's just take like the college dropout stories, like a Zuckerberg, right? I don't need college. I don't need foundation. I don't need life experiences. Like I'm going to break the internet. Guess what? Those opportunities don't really exist today, right? Very few 18-year-olds are starting, the next wave of Web 3.0. I'm sorry to say it. Like it was a different era. And even then he was 1 in a billion. So let's get real. You do need a foundation.
100%.
I love that word.
And I think that you said this earlier, right? When you're talking about getting into sales, the foundation is also getting yourself ready to be the CEO, to know all the different roles underneath you. Like it's a better way of being able to manage and lead and coach those different individuals because you sat in their shoes.
Exactly. And so you have to be able to relate to the people you're going to manage. And to go a little deeper on the sales side of things, right? I worked in between my own startups. I worked at a heavily venture-backed startup here in New York. It was actually the most valuable startup in New York City at the time. It was called ZocDoc, and it was an incredible experience.
Might have heard of
it. Yeah. We went from 400 to 800 people in the 18 months I was there. And not to pick on anybody, but all of upper management, including the founders, were all McKinsey. And that might work. But when you have people running sales departments that have never sold anything, you have a massive potential for a culture problem. Because if your boots on the ground, your sales reps know that this guy has never been in their shoes, that is not how you garner the trust and like that mindset of like the, your what do you call them? Like, when you're dialing for dollars.
100%.
Like, oh, you never cold call anybody? Cool. I don't respect you if you're going to try to manage me having zero experience.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have the same exact mindset. You have to be in the trenches with your team, and you have to know what those highs and lows of sales feels like to be able to coach and manage somebody within that field. So we talked a lot about the background. Let's talk about the present, right?
Yeah.
What inspired you really to start Loverboy?
Personal experience.
Okay.
Look, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but in 2016, when we were starting to film season 1, I looked at the brands sending us alcohol products,
Mhm.
and some of these things had not changed for 20 years. And we would wake up with gnarly hangovers. And look, they understood the value of product placement just like I understood the
Mhm.
value of product placement. So, the producers wanted us to pay for our groceries. They wanted us to pay for our various beverages. And that can add up. And we're no dummies. We're a cast of hustlers in New York. We're like, yo, let's get other brands to
Mhm.
send us free products so we don't have to pay for it. And they'll gain exposure. But these products were, in some cases, archaic. And what I realized in alcohol, and this is as someone at the time was actually working on a nutrition coaching app. I'm like, yo, somehow, some way, the alcohol industry has avoided having to put a nutrition label on the ingredients on the product,
Mhm.
which is absurd. Like if you go through any other aisle of the grocery store, all right, let's check this out. What do? You flip it around.
Mhm.
And look, the better for you movement and the sugar reduction and an emphasis on higher quality ingredients, that's been going on for 20 years. And somehow alcohol was immune to much needed innovation.
Mhm.
And so when I talk today, people are like, dude, there's 1,000 seltzers, there's 1,000 cocktails. And again, guess what? When I started, there wasn't. A lot has happened in 5 years. This industry has seen 20 years of innovation in about 2 to 3. But the inspiration behind Loverboy was like, listen, very few consumer categories are dominated by one brand. And I don't like to say them by name, but the hard tea that's been around since 99 was controlling 90+% of the hard tea market. The product hadn't changed. And I used to joke, and I would say it's like diabetes in a bottle.
Yeah.
Because like if you have 6 of them,
When you look at the
you're,
back of
you're
it,
on that
yeah.
path. Well, no, you can't look at the path. You can't look at the back. There's no label.
Oh, that's crazy.
You have to dig around. And even on the internet, there's mixed, people are trying to figure out the calories. They're trying to figure out the sugar. They're trying to figure out the carbs. And there's no Bible for that.
Mhm.
There's no, like MyFitnessPal has one number. This other site has another. And it's very confusing. And I was just like, why can't we use better quality ingredients
Mhm.
that these big alcohol suppliers are just too cheap to use? Let's make better tasting, better for you products using a fraction of the sugar. And in fact, we figured out how to make a hard tea that tastes great with 0 sugar. So we use monk fruit. Some people don't like the aftertaste. Some people don't like the aftertaste of stevia. But I'd much rather, use those ingredients than sucralose, which is what you find in everything from Prime to some of the new hard teas in the market
Mhm.
to Celsius. Not to throw these brands under the bus, but like how much sucralose, aka artificial sweeteners, do you want to be consuming? And there's a lot of studies out there that suggest you don't want to consume any. So that was the inspiration.
Mhm.
Like I looked at an industry that in my mind was like the wild, wild west of consumer packaged goods, CPG. And then you segment that down to beverage alcohol. And then you segment that down to what we call the 4th category, which is kind of like ready to drink,
Mhm.
whether you call it flavored beer or, there's a lot of different names for it, but it's not beer, wine, or spirits. It's this 4th category that's taken off since hard seltzers. So that was like a long-winded answer,
No.
but I just cannot believe as a consumer that I get 0 transparency.
Yep.
And there's very limited options on the shelf. The big guys control everything.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me disgusted because people were asking, hey, Kyle, what you drinking? And I'm like, I actually feel guilty telling you.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's a cool challenger brand now entering the marketplace,
Yeah.
right? And I think you guys have a really unique positioning on what makes you guys different. Outside of obviously the ingredients, what else do you feel like helps Loverboy stand out?
Well, we saw very early on that most of the marketing and most of the products in alcohol were made by men for men.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, 70% of alcohol purchases at retail are made by women. That's probably the case for most consumer categories. And I'm like, wow, huge disconnect.
Yeah.
The big, old gray-haired white dudes that are controlling the products that you see on the shelf don't really understand today's consumer, and they sure as heck don't understand what women want.
Yep.
And I happen to be on Bravo, which is like the #1 rated network for women. So that was like another light bulb that went off. I'm like, hey, I can reach a consumer that these big guys are A, kind of ignoring, B, don't understand, and C, really can't resonate with based on the products that they're churning out. So that was like another aha moment.
That's awesome. We talked a little bit about, obviously, content earlier with the Bird Dogs experience and then utilizing the Summer House platform. How have you felt those two things have really elevated the Loverboy brand?
Yeah, I think the word lifestyle brand is thrown around a lot so much because guess what? Every brand would love to be a lifestyle brand. And when I say lifestyle, I don't mean like me running a business, where I'm putting in 10, 20 hours a week and it's just like on cruise control. I mean a lifestyle brand where you have people that are diehard loyals or loyalists that will go out of their way to buy it, and a community kind of builds up around it. And, for me, doing it on a show that, sure, there's drama, there's petty bickering, there's everything you'd expect out of a Bravo show, but we're doing it as New Yorkers that frequent the Hamptons, which, like, I don't care where you live. It's like, I'd love to do that.
Absolutely.
So it's the key word when season 1 dropped was aspirational. And I kind of laughed because I'm from New Hampshire and I never thought that word would be used in a sentence describing a show that I'm on, or I never could have imagined being on a show. But that helps, right? It helps drive home the aspirational aspect of it. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't get pigeonholed within one product category. We wanted to make sure that Loverboy was kind of like occasion-based when it came to the product itself, but also was a true lifestyle brand that people wanted to like support. And so merch has become one way to do that, right?
Awesome.
We sell millions of dollars of merch and people love it. They eat it up. Most alcohol brands literally have to give away their t-shirts and whatnot. Like, please, like if you hold this at the bar, I will give you a Heineken. Not so with Loverboy. We constantly sell out of merch. And I think that's, one way to think about how we've built this lifestyle brand. And look, other people can do this. You don't need a TV show. I'm very fortunate. I'm very well aware that's a bit of a cheat code here from a customer acquisition standpoint and the ability to kind of accomplish, building that lifestyle brand. But I see so many brands that kind of give people a look behind the scenes and are building it in public. It doesn't have to be on Bravo. It can be on YouTube. It can be on Instagram.
On social media.
Anybody can do it, literally. Like, find something you're passionate about where you think that there's, a target audience that would also be passionate about it, and build it in public.
Yeah. I think that's one of the key points that you can learn from that experience too, right? What are some of the biggest challenges you've had? Obviously, I know that on the show you share a lot about different challenges that arise, right? And I think that's part of the
share too much.
Building in public. But what are some of the challenges that you faced in the current role, and like how have you overcome those?
Well, industry specific, when we were having our moment, because like in alcohol, you need your wholesalers and your retailers and your consumers all kind of on the same page at the same time. When we were having our moment, when we were like the shiny new toy, we couldn't buy enough cans. There was a 10 billion can shortage in 21 and 22. It started actually in 20. And so when everybody wanted it, we couldn't supply it. And that wasn't unique to us. I mean, even the biggest beverage suppliers in the world were coming up short. Like I said, 10 billion cans. So that was a huge challenge because now, when we expanded, we gave our distributors product. We didn't really have a big enough team to support them after that initial launch. And then, our wholesalers and retailers, they're kind of naturally off to the next shiny new toy. And so I think I underestimated, all right, we're like this new age brand, a challenger brand, like you said. We're kind of like writing our own playbook, writing our own go-to-market. We expanded 10 times faster than is basically advised in this industry. And now we've kind of had to realize that there's nuances of this industry that it is what it is. We're not going to change how wholesale has worked in this country for the last 100 years, right? The 3-tier system that people talk about in alcohol, it's the supplier, it's the wholesaler, and the retailer. You can't legally sell our teas direct.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a huge challenge, just trying to maintain the mind share of our distributors. It's funny, like when our brand popped off, our brand had probably 1/3 the awareness as it has today. But our distributors gave us 3 times the attention 2 years ago. Right? So the show continues to kind of break through to mainstream popularity. Our brand has 3 times as many followers as we did when we launched all these markets. So there's just a huge disconnect between what the consumer wants and what they end up getting because of this 3-tier system. And it's out of my control. I can only play the game.
Yep.
I think the other big thing on the kind of like building in public side is when I'm too honest and a soundbite gets used and all the context goes missing. Like last year, I blurted out to make a point that Loverboy is tanking. In reality, Loverboy was going through some growing pains, but we've accomplished like so much in so little time that I'm so proud of what we were able to do. But last year, we were, for the first time ever, we were not profitable. And we were having to grow our team to hold those distributors accountable faster than the revenue was coming through the door. And ironically, that is probably what every single fast-growing, not just alcohol brand, but any consumer packaged good brands experience. That's why raising money in this industry is so common.
Yep.
In some cases, these brands are hemorrhaging cash right up until they either A, get acquired, or B, go belly up. So I was experiencing, again, kind of like, hey, this is welcome, to the new normal post-COVID where, you have to build up your resources and you might be unprofitable for a period of time. And I was just freaking out and I wasn't able to articulate the complexities of this industry. And I've worked in healthcare, real estate, finance, you name it. Nothing's more complex and archaic than alcohol. And I struggle to get my wife, my friends, my cast members to understand it. And then when that gets whittled down to like 42 minutes of television every week, there's no way. Like this isn't on Bloomberg.
Yeah.
This is on Bravo. So I can't bore people.
You can't get to talk about
Right.
the business aspect.
So we'll get
just
to
hone in on
exactly.
this one little clip. Yeah.
So the highlight that actually makes it into the edit is
Yeah.
we're going belly up. Or no, we are tanking. And I kind of shot myself in the foot on that one. But I was struggling. I was stressed out, and I just felt like none of the closest people around me understood what was going on.
Yeah. But I think it also is, this from your past experiences, right? There always is going to be, it's not all highs when you're a CEO. It's not all highs when you launch a new brand. There's going to be those ups and downs, and maybe that moment was one of those downs, and you came out of it. You saw like the long game and the future of the company and the brand. So let's talk about more positive, right?
Yeah,
What has been some of the more inspiring moments of being the CEO, founder, and creator of Loverboy?
There's something to be said about doing something tangible. Like I said, I was in tech. When I went to business school, I was like fascinated with tech, marketplaces, you name it. Turns out those are like the hardest businesses to actually launch and gain traction. On the flip side, Loverboy is tangible, and there's an immediate ROI. There's a buzz.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something to be said about putting a product that has a fraction of calories and sugar in someone's hand. It still tastes amazing, and it's a brand with a story behind it. And like you start checking off things that are rarely checked off in alcohol. And I'm just so proud when I can just catch someone's first initial reaction. And I also think I'm doing some good here. Like transparency is much needed in alcohol, right? All these big suppliers of these products that are so mainstream, they're hiding all sorts of crap because they don't have to put the ingredients on the label. And I think it's completely whack. Like people they have a right to understand what they're consuming. But for whatever reason, the government, the lobbying, the big suppliers, the 3-tier system, they've prevented transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I do feel like we're doing some good in that sense. It's still alcohol. The government still says it's a poison. So I can't legally say these products are better for you. But I think, if you think about obesity
Mm-hmm.
and diabetes, they're is an absurd amount of sugar in almost every alcoholic beverage out there.
Mhm.
And when you're drinking that tequila and you're like, yo, but there's no sugar in here. It's so smooth. Well, it has additives. So like the list goes on.
Yeah,
So
you
even when
don't-
you think you're being
You don't really
healthy-
know what you're drinking at the time.
Exactly. And I just, to me, if I can, bring some change to an industry that I think desperately needs it, I'll feel good about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys are transforming the industry. I love asking this question for every CEO that sits down with me. How do you balance the demand of being a CEO with your personal life?
I have no idea. I think balance is one of those things that is you strive for it, but if you're, I don't have kids yet, and much to my wife's dismay, like I'm like, this is the time in my life where I am going to grind day and night. 60, 80 plus hour weeks are the norm. They have been the norm for me for the last 5 years. And then you factor in that I film 1, 2, sometimes 3 different TV shows in my spare time. There's been zero balance. But I feel like if you're not willing to have a period of your life
Mhm.
that is completely out of balance in order to accomplish something and build something, like for me, I'm building financial freedom and financial independence
Mhm.
for my future family. And sometimes my friends forget that. Sometimes my wife forgets that. But that's what this is all about. And for me, it's just carving out 45 minutes a day for some exercise so I don't go absolutely insane.
No, I appreciate the honest answer, and I think that's important though to look at it in the long run and for the future. So, speaking of the future, where do you see Loverboy in the next 5 to 10 years?
I've often been told that it takes 10 years to build a beverage brand. Take Celsius. I think they went public in like 2008.
Mhm.
I hadn't heard about them until the pandemic, right? So for me, it's just staying focused, keeping our head down. Yes, there's competition, but most of the competition won't be here in a year or two. Like that's the norm in this industry. Whether you're a small startup or you're a big supplier throwing what at the wall, most brands don't make it 18 months or 2 years and are then on life support. So for us, it's about kind of powering through some of these very macro and external, cycles in our industry and then in the economy, and just making sure we're still here and listening to our consumers, listening to our retailers, and listening to our wholesalers to make sure that we're churning out products that are continuing to set trends.
Mhm.
And that's what we're going to be doing at Loverboy. We're going to be setting trends, not following trends. I learned that, like I said, out of business school. And, just continue to add transparency to an industry that I think needs it.
That's awesome. What's on the horizon? Is there anything you could share in terms of new flavors coming out? Any collabs in the horizon?
Yeah, so we kind of hinted at a THC product. So thanks to the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp-derived THC, as long as it's below a certain percentage, it's like 0.3,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Delta 9. Not to get too technical here, you can launch products that historically were impossible or had to go through like the dispensary system in some of the states that had legalized it. So we're about to launch, hopefully by the end of August, a THC infused social soda. And why I say social, like this is an alcohol replacement. And we're putting things in there in addition to THC that give you natural boosts of energy and clarity. And it's a new age soda in the
Awesome.
sense that it's low sugar and tastes amazing, but it still pulls on nostalgic flavors like grape, orange, cola, etc. So I'm super excited about that because I really do believe people are going to be drinking less but drinking better. But when they're not grabbing a Loverboy tea, spritz, cocktail, I'd love for them to be grabbing one of our non-alcs or one of our THC products because, again, we're building a portfolio around occasions, different occasions for different kind of products. So that's kind of like, I think, on the short-term horizon. And then, again, just looking at what consumers want that they're not getting on the shelf. Simple things like an incredible margarita that isn't loaded with sugar.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't really exist right now.
No.
Even like a Cutwater is about the same amount of sugar as a soda, which is disturbing, right? There's better ways to do it. So, we're always innovating and we're, We're fortunate to have some unbelievable customers that will pay a premium to ship it direct if we make it wine-based, so we can kind of test it out and see if it's prime time for retail.
That's awesome. Keep the innovation going. Is there anything about Loverboy that we did not cover that you want the listeners to know?
No, I think we talked about transparency. We talked about the fact that, we're not just a hard tea company. I think one of the things that I'm probably most thankful for is the Bravo fan base. Trust me, they give it to me when I screw up, but there's no better audience, and every good brand needs a good audience. So we're very fortunate there. We've been able to do all of this without a traditional marketing budget, which is one of the reasons why we were so profitable, which is one of the reasons why we didn't raise a bunch of money when we could have and probably should have, because now it's a different era. Things have changed a lot. But I just feel so fortunate to, shoot, we're going to be filming season 9 in a couple days. And, I think that what I could say to everybody else that doesn't happen to have the fortune of being on TV is, hey, just look at what's going on in these other creator brands. You don't have to be on TV, but I do thank my Bravo fans.
Yeah, my wife is one of them. She purchased the espresso martini, I think, as soon as you guys released it online. So so she's definitely part of that. In closing, any final advice you want to give anyone that's really an inspiring entrepreneur, anyone that wants to take a brand or create a brand new idea that they have in their head?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things I want to leave people with is, if you have an idea, if you're searching for an idea, there's all sorts of people out there that say you got to be all in, right? Particularly if you're looking to raise venture capital, which, by the way, I would focus on business models that don't require venture capital. And if you happen to raise money, it's on your terms and it's icing on the cake. But what I would say to people is that going all in on something that's so nascent, that bringing a product or service or whatever it is to market is so far away that between then and now, you're going to be stressing about how you're going to pay your bills. Don't lose sight of the fact that you can't be a successful entrepreneur if you are literally incapable of, covering the cost of living. Mm-hmm. Go get a job. Go get those life experiences. Build that foundation, and hustle on the side. Have a side hustle. Have something that you burn the midnight oil to explore and vet. And if it doesn't work, you didn't just shoot yourself in the foot by quitting your job. And I just encourage people, if you're not willing to work a day job and then come home and try to get that side hustle off the ground, you're not going to be cut out for entrepreneurship anyway.
Yep.
So don't cut off your support line, AKA your income, too early. And, have some line of sight as to all right, if you're going to raise money, get it as far as you can. It's not a PowerPoint. At this point, you need revenue, you need customers, you need a product in hand to go raise serious cash. So build in that timeline. And then, if you're not raising money, have a line of sight towards all right, when can this throw off enough revenue where I actually could draw a salary?
Yep.
Because now you can start to do the math. So, go all in, but only go in when it makes sense. Don't stress yourself out by quitting your job prematurely. That's all I can say.
No, I think it's great advice. I think sometimes people just think success happens overnight.
Celsius is a great example, right? I know the CEO of Celsius. A lot of people just they can't believe me when I say that Celsius has been around since the late 2000s, right? So there's no such thing, like you said, as an overnight success. And you have to be willing to put in the work.
Absolutely. If our listeners wanted to find out more about Loverboy, what is the easiest way for them to do so?
Yeah, just you can find us on all socials at Drink Loverboy and drinkloverboy.com. You can find me. I'm Kyle Cooke. The letters I am Kyle Cooke with an E. And one of these days, I'll get some type of podcast or YouTube channel about the ground, so we give a little more behind the scenes than what you get on Summer House.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed hearing your background, all about your experiences and life lessons. So I think it's a great perspective for all of our listeners to have. So I really appreciate you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Cheers, everybody.